You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, I'm Maureen Bogey.
And I'm Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to what? Yes, you guessed correctly, the Creep Street Podcast.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Thank you guys for being here today. What a joy, what a pleasure. Feel free to follow us on Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, on Twitter at Creep Street Pod. We're on Facebook. Also, we have a wonderful, wonderful Patreon community. Dylan, will you please list off our top tier, the elite, the absolute truest of the true, our $10 patrons.
That's right. Let's hear it for the Creep Street Elite. The Dream, James Watkins. The Finnish Face, Via Longfist. The British Bonebreaker, Bex Martin. The Vivacious Vicky McHugh. The Tenacious Teresa Hackworth. The Madman Marcus Hall. The Heartbreak Kid, Chris Hackworth. The Oh-So-Suave Sean Richardson. The Notorious Nicholas Barker. And the Terrified Taylor Lashmans.
Ooh, that is a sexy group of elite people.
That's right. And if you want to join those Creep Street Elite, you just head over to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast to get all sorts of goodies.
That's right. And also a reminder to please tell a friend about us. Like, rate, subscribe. I know earlier we had, I had really implored you, begged you even, to give us 5-star reviews so that Dylan would agree to marry me. Thank you so much.
Yes.
It went through and we got enough. However, Dylan has been dangling divorce over my head. So it's just better. He said the more 5-star reviews, the better. So it would just help me sleep at night.
Yes.
If you guys could just toss a few if you get a second.
Absolutely.
But now that I got that off of my chest, that's been eating me up inside. Dylan, what are we talking about today? What's going on? What's the details? Tell me now.
Well, love of my life, today we are talking about
Come on.
the House of 200 Demons.
This story is so scary. I've been wanting to do this one for a while,
Yes.
especially because, Gary, Indiana is not that far away from Chicago, Illinois, where we are right now.
It's very close, and this happened fairly recently. This was just
Right.
in the 2010s. I mean, when all this went down.
Good God.
And you know what? It also slipped my attention until just recently that this episode is going to be coming out on Friday the 13th.
That's right. Of course.
Because let me tell you, you're an unlucky motherfucker if you find yourself at this house.
Yes. Every day is Friday the 13th there. And in the bad way. And in the way that it's actually scary. Not in the way where, like, when it's Friday the 13th, it's kind of fun and you, like, kiss your girlfriend on your couch in your basement at night.
Yeah.
It kind of spooky. Not that kind. It's like the actual Friday the 13th where you're going to get scared,
That's
haunted
right.
and scared and killed maybe.
Before I roll up my sleeves,
Woo!
scrub up my hands, and thrust them into the placenta of this story,
Jesus.
let me state my sources before we get too deep into this, baby.
Come on.
My main source was an article from ChicagoHauntings.com called The Demon House, an American horror story, written by one name, Ursula.
Okay, it's
Didn't even have a last name.
the Sea Witch
And
from The
that's
Little
right.
Mermaid.
Well, also, I didn't use a lot from it because this takes place mostly after what we're going to be focusing on, but I did use the 2018 documentary film Demon House.
Yes.
Starring
yes.
and directed by none other than Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures. While he does touch on what we're going to touch on, his is more about his experience in the house when he later purchased it and whatnot. And we'll touch on that at the end. But that is it's on, I think it's streaming on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
If you want to check it out, it's your typical, it's Zach Bagans being Baggins. It's him walking through a dark house going, bro. It's like,
Oh my God,
and that's
yeah.
not to belittle. I mean, think of it as like a longer, unedited episode of Ghost Adventures.
Totally. And what I think is perfect about this is that this episode is really a great lead up to watching that documentary.
It actually, that's a great point.
Yeah, because we're going to give you a ton of the background, way more than probably is in that documentary.
Exactly.
And we'll talk a little bit about the documentary, but not a ton, so you'll still be able to really experience the movie.
Oh, yeah.
So this was kind of an unintentional little pairing.
Exactly.
But it works, though. So we recommend doing that.
Well, as we said, this is one of the creepiest stories of demonic infestation we've heard. Mm-hmm. What's unique about this one, like I said, is it happened relatively recently.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, you don't hear about them, within the last decade.
Right.
So that's kind of what was so interesting about this story. Now, it all begins in the fall of 2011. LaToya Ammons, her 3 children, and her mother, Rosa Campbell, found themselves a small rental home on Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana. Now, by all accounts, the Ammons family were close-knit, well-adjusted people.
Yes, they seemed just like totally normal.
Like, how many haunting stories start with, the family was batshit crazy, but they were right about the haunting.
I know.
So LaToya was a single mother raising her children, trying to make ends meet. Little did they know that this new house that they were to call home would go on to be called the House of 200 Demons, or more simply, Demon House.
Oh, God. That sucks.
It had not earned that rep yet, baby, but it was
Right.
about to.
And you know what? Other people who would be in this situation,
Right.
maybe they would be able to, they experienced something a little strange.
Exactly.
And it set them off, but they had enough money to be able to just move out and get somewhere else.
Exactly.
And that's why, like, their stories never got so bad, whereas LaToya, like, she's a single mom for 3
right.
kids.
Right.
It's like not just as simple to just,
pick up and leave.
And that's why they're able to be there for it to get so bad.
Exactly.
And it just sucks that it's like, it's so easy to say, why don't you just get up and leave? And it's like, you can't just leave.
Well, the family had barely been in the house for a month when things started to go awry.
That sucks.
The first sign that something was off was the sudden appearance of flies in the home.
Bad sign.
Not just, the occasional housefly, but utter swarms of big black horseflies. They had a screened-in porch. It got to where the flies were just like coated the whole porch.
I'm getting flashbacks to the Perrin family
Yep.
/ The Conjuring.
Yep. And keep in mind, it was now December in Indiana. Mm-hmm. It was cold as hell. Flies would not be doing that.
Exactly. And you know what? Was the exact same situation in the Perrin family.
Yep.
Same exact thing. It was too cold.
And they put out fly paper, and
Yep.
daily they swatted and sprayed the flies. The infestation was persistent. Nothing seemed to make it go away.
Okay.
But not long after, other strange things began to happen. One particular instance happened just after midnight one evening. Both LaToya and her mother, Rosa, were in bed in their separate bedrooms when suddenly they both began to hear the heavy thud of footsteps coming up the stairs that led from the basement to the kitchen.
Fuck.
Thump, thump, thump. And then they heard the door in the kitchen that leads to the basement creak open. Both women lay in their beds, scared stiff. They don't even want to move. They assume there's an intruder. They're too scared to even get up to call the police. LaToya lay there for several minutes till after enough time had passed, she worked up the courage to go see for herself. She tiptoed in the dark towards the kitchen. She took a deep breath and flipped on the kitchen light. No one was there. She searched the kitchen, searched the basement, no one to be found. This would continue night after night, and slowly it would get worse and worse. After some time, the footsteps in the opening of the kitchen door were the least of their worries. At times, there would be a pounding on the door of the kitchen, as if someone was in the basement wanting out.
Oh my God.
When they would open the door, no one was there.
That is so fucked up.
And in addition to this, there began to be the sound of growling, almost like an animal behind the door when they were banging. Like it was a growling thing. When they would open it, no one was there.
Ooh. So everything that has happened has been has been leading towards something demonic.
Yeah. And at this time, and they don't realize this at the time.
No,
at first, obviously the flies, they don't make a connection with the flies because flies are flies. even though it was weird,
Well, also they're not, they probably weren't these people that were like obsessed with this stuff like us.
Exactly.
They don't know. They're like, why are there like
Exactly.
gross flies here?
They were more concerned with intruder. They thought this was an intruder.
Right.
And then they thought, well, damn it, is there like a way in we don't know about? Because they're hearing this every night. It's like, is there someone like crashing in our bed? Like they were like, what the hell is going on? The grandmother, Rosa, one night was awakened by the sound of footsteps. To her horror, when she opened her eyes, outside of her bedroom, in the living room, she could see a shadowy figure of a man pacing back and forth in the living room. Rosa's paralyzed with fear, so she thinks there's an intruder in the house, of course. She lays awake and terrified until morning. Not only was there no one there, but all doors and windows were locked with no sign of forced entry, but there was something. Big wet footprints that paced around in the living room as if someone had come in from a storm and was, didn't take their shoes off. My assumption is this was about the time when they started to think, maybe this isn't like a living intruder. When this started.
Okay.
Well, some time passes and these weird things keep happening. Cut to a late night on the evening of March 10th, 2012, and there had recently been a death in the family, and they had friends and family over. It was getting late. They were chatting, I'm assuming they probably just come from a visitation or something.
Right.
Friends and family are over. LaToya's daughter came to her during the night and said that something had yanked her off the couch. A few moments later, one of LaToya's sons was thrown into a freezer that was adjacent to the living room. And later that same night, after the children had gone to bed, the adults were up talking when suddenly they heard a loud scream coming from the daughter's room. The daughter was sharing her room that night with a cousin who was there. Rosa got up, the grandmother runs to the room. And according to her, when she opened the door, she saw her granddaughter's body fall to the bed as if it had been suspended in the air right before she entered. The screaming was coming from the girl's cousin, who said that she awoke to find LaToya's daughter hovering above the bed, still asleep and levitating above the bed. And when she screamed, she just kept levitating. And the moment Rosa opened the door, she drops to the bed.
Oh my God.
Well, the guests they had over that night would refuse to ever come back over. And unfortunately, the Ammons family were becoming isolated as people began to distance themselves. So obviously, people that believed the Ammons weren't coming around because they were scared, but likewise, others were keeping their distance for other reasons. You see, LaToya and Rosa had begged local churches for help, only to be given the cold shoulder.
God.
Local churches distanced themselves from the family, believing they were making all of this up. Now, LaToya and Rosa were becoming desperate, and they tearfully pled with a small community church for just help of any kind. At last, they were shown some kindness. A minister from the church paid the family a visit at their home. And the recommended remedy was a thorough cleaning with bleach and ammonia, followed by the inscribing of crosses on all doors and windows with oil. Mm-hmm. And all family members also were anointed with oil. So far, the word demon had not been said in reference to the house the Ammons were living in.
Right. Well, the minister's like not going to just throw that
word around. He's not just going to throw the D word around willy-nilly.
Come on.
And this isn't the minister that the one who comes in to save the day.
Yeah, this is just the first guy,
Oh, yeah. When LaToya and her mother contacted two clairvoyants to observe the home, they got a diagnosis they weren't expecting. The clairvoyants told the Ammons that their house was infested by more than 200 demons, and that the haunting was focused in the basement for some reason or another. Most importantly, they were told they needed to get the kids out of the house immediately. As we know, this wasn't an option. The family had just moved into the house a few months prior, couldn't afford to go anywhere else. Like we said, this woman's struggling to support 3 children. Well, obviously, they couldn't leave, so LaToya had to prepare the house and her family for the storm ahead.
Oh, God.
Since leaving wasn't an option, the clairvoyant suggested LaToya build an altar in her basement, which she did. On it was a sheet, a white candle, and a statue of the Holy Family. LaToya then, dressed all in white, walked through the house, burning sage and reading from Psalm 91, asking for God's protection. After which she placed the Bible on the altar, open to Psalm 91. Now, for 3 days, the Ammons family were at peace. But after that, the nightmare truly started.
Oh, no.
Sing about it, baby. Well, it was then, according to LaToya, that the possession began happening. Now, unlike other possessions we discussed, this one was sort of an on-again, off-again thing. The possession would take hold suddenly and then vanish as quickly as it came.
Yeah, I think that happens more often than it seems.
Yes, I think so too, because I think what's commonly accepted is that even though sometimes it seems like they're not possessed, the demonic spirit is still lying and dormant within them.
Right.
And it periodically takes hold, almost like if you had a chronic ailment that spikes up. Okay, it's kind of like that. You're not always feeling that,
right?
But it spikes up. That's kind of what we've mostly been described. And I'm assuming maybe that's what was going on here too. Although the source describes it as sort of a on and off thing, which I'm guessing it was just the thing was working or not working, depending on.
Well, right. Well, even Annalise Michel, who from our episode we know was one of the the most intense possession cases that we know of.
Exactly.
But she even had times where she was able to go to school and to have a relationship.
Right.
There are times when people who are possessed can be themselves.
Right. Absolutely. Now, those who were affected were LaToya and each of her 3 children, primarily the 2 boys. Now, for the sake of context, according to my sources, the age of the children at this time were 12, 9, and 7. The daughter was 12, and then the 2 boys were 9 and 7. The possession, when it would take hold, it said their eyes would bulge and a cold, sinister smile would appear on their face.
Oh, God, that freaks me out.
They would make gruff noises, unlike their normal voices, and would utter indecipherable words and phrases. And when they weren't actively possessed, the family was plagued by extreme fatigue and headaches. So even when you weren't actively, under the control of this thing, you're also just feeling like shit. So
you know what? I got that sinister smile
It's
thing.
creepy.
That really freaks me out.
So according to LaToya, the supernatural forces at work targeted each of the children differently. Her youngest child, the 7-year-old boy, began to play with an imaginary friend. And this imaginary friend would coax the boy into the closet for hours at a time, where he was apparently just playing.
Yeah, this is bad. This is a bad sign. You got to shut that down quick.
Apparently, this imaginary friend also would tell the boy he was killed, like that he had been killed, and that's why no one else could see him.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess he was being honest.
The 9-year-old son would also make similar claims of just having the sensation that he knew what it was like to be murdered.
And can you imagine as a mother hearing your child say that?
Oh, it gets worse for the mother. Every nightmare imaginable.
Oh my God, I just feel so bad for her.
Yes, it turns into a shit show.
Oh my God. And I feel bad for the kids too, of course, obviously. But it's just
right.
For a mom, I just can't even, just feeling so helpless like that. It just must be so terrible.
Absolutely. And the 12-year-old daughter claimed that a voice in her head told her she would be dead within 20 minutes and that her family would be taken away.
Whoa.
Keep that in mind. Likewise, physical attacks on the family began to happen. Her daughter was once assaulted with a heavy headboard to the degree she required stitches.
Oh my God.
Likewise, the youngest son would be seen flying out of the bathroom as if someone had picked him up and chucked his ass out the door.
Oh my God.
So this thing was dangerous. It was flinging kids around. Yeah.
Yeah, you as a child, or really just as a person,
right?
You can't really fling yourself that way to
exactly.
where you look like you were actually thrown.
Exactly.
That is.
It didn't look like he was running and jump. Even if he was
just
it looked as though he was being chucked.
Oh my God, that is so scary.
Occasionally, the family would spend the night in a hotel when the assaults grew too severe, which also another drain on finances. It's just one more thing you don't need is, paying for a hotel.
Right.
Needless to say, these remedies that the clairvoyants gave the Ammons family were no longer seeming to work. They pleaded with the family doctor for help of any kind, and later the doctor would actually tell reporters that when he was first approached, he was kind of scared. But at the same time, in his notes, he also seemed to think that maybe they were crazy.
Okay.
But that notion would change when the Ammons family paid the doctor an in-person visit at the doctor's office. According to medical staff testimony, in the Department of Child Services files, the two boys began cursing and growling at the doctors in deep, gravelly voices. The youngest of the two, the 7-year-old, was picked up by an unseen force and thrown against the office wall.
Oh my God.
The boys both then fainted, and an employee there at the doctor's office called 911. Police officers arrived, but no one could figure out what was going on because the doctor and the staff couldn't even explain what they had just seen. They were totally blind. They didn't even know how to explain this to the police.
That is so scary that these just like makes me I'm getting like a shiver down my spine.
The boys were taken to a local hospital, and when LaToya told them of what had been happening to her and her family, they pretty much laughed in her face.
What the fuck? I mean,
at
what
least just
the
fucking,
fuck?
At least just, even if you don't have to, just at least like have a fucking poker face, asshole.
Yeah, like why are you like this?
It's like, I get it. I'm sure you get people coming in with crazy stories. I get it.
Yeah, but this is clearly
like,
the worst day of this woman's life.
Right, and even if she was making this up, just have a fucking poker face.
Yeah.
It's like, who are you to be like, fuck no? It's like, just have a poker face. Just
like,
go, okay, just like go along with it. Well, now, when the two boys had awakened at the hospital, they were completely back to normal with no knowledge of what had transpired. The 9-year-old boy remained fine, but suddenly the 7-year-old boy began to convulse and scream, shouting curses at everyone nearby. The convulsing was so bad, it took hospital staff, 5 grown men, to hold down the 7-year-old child.
A 7-year-old.
5 grown-ass men holding down a 7-year-old boy. This obviously horrified the hospital staff.
That is scary.
But believe it or not, LaToya's nightmare was about to get worse.
LaToya.
Horrified by what had transpired with the two boys, someone from either the doctor's office or the hospital contacted the Department of Child Services.
I mean, that fucking sucks, but also I understand someone just really was so concerned.
It's, on one hand, obviously, as third-party perspective, we have to look, we look at both sides. If you were the mother, and this was really happening, I could not imagine. It's one thing for people to laugh in your face. Yeah. But I could not imagine. You are going through this hell. You are looking for help any way you can. And when you finally get someone to listen to you, they're going to try to take your children away. Yeah. Yeah. I could not imagine a worse feeling. But likewise, like you said, if I'm this person, I don't know these people. Who knows if, you obviously... The primary concern, whether you believe the woman or not, should be the children, right? Obviously, in any case. So I guess I do. I mean, if you don't know, what are you going to do? Like tell? Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
I really wish that there was like
a way to know for sure.
Yeah, like I wish there was, a paranormal investigative department of the. Yeah. Of the FBI or something. You know what I mean? Like, I really wish that was a thing.
The greatest horror of all of this, demons or no demons, would be that this woman is being honest about what's happening and then have her children taken. That would be the greatest horror.
And she's completely helpless.
And likewise, like we said, but if you're the people on the other side, like, you also don't want to send these children back to an unsafe environment.
Well, also if you didn't see the whole thing, or if you didn't hear the whole thing or didn't know the whole story, and you just saw or just heard these kids saying things or knowing things that they shouldn't be able to know or say, you're gonna, of course, be very concerned for them, especially when they're so violent. So I do understand in that way that it's like, I'm sure the people who did it their concern is only for the kid. It's just such that fine line between like actually being doing the right thing and then just like being a busybody.
Right. Well, also if you're that person's perspective, if you're in that person's perspective, like I said, the worst thing would be to find out you allowed the children to go back home to an unsafe environment. Right. But also, you would feel equally as awful if you found out the mother was innocent. You took her children.
Oh, I mean,
it's
that's
gotta
like,
be a tough,
it's inhumane.
It's got to be horrible. It's got to be horrible. I'll just make this. I made this statement with Annalise Michelle. I'll make it here too.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, whether you believe this was a real case
Yeah.
of demonic infestation, or if you think that the family was lying, or that just the mother was lying, and that the children were being harmed, either way, you are 100% correct. Yeah. This is one of those things. Obviously, at the end of the day, what matters is these children. Thank God they're alive.
Right.
Now, it's not like Annalise Michelle.
Right.
Thank God they're still alive. But the real horror is that these children had to experience any of this, whether it was by the mother or by actual demonic forces. So we'll just put that out there, just a statement. We aren't saying this is 100% gospel or not. We're just saying, let's just think of the damn children.
That's
please.
right,
Think
please.
of the children. But anyway, soon after, the family would return to the hospital to meet with a caseworker from Child Services. And an exam showed that the children were all healthy and free of bruises. Likewise, they were deemed mentally stable. The Toya was also deemed mentally healthy after an examination. But as the caseworker continued to interview the children, the 7-year-old once again began to growl and bare his teeth.
Oh, fuck.
His eyes would bulge and roll into the back of his head.
That's so scary, and oh, fuck, I hate this.
And at one point, he pounced on his brother, attempting to strangle him. The adults in the room had to pry the 7-year-old boy's hands from his brother's throat. Now, this is something mentioned also in the documentary. I remember in the documentary, they talk about how there were times when both boys, right now we're focused on the young, but there was times later when both boys would suddenly start talking in a weird language, and they would acknowledge to each other that they were both ready to die.
Yes.
And they would then attack each other, but in a way that wasn't just boys roughhousing.
Exactly, yes.
It's described as they would attack each other with a ferocity you would only see if you were trying to kill another human being with your bare hands. These two boys, and they would have to be separated. These two boys, it was like they just look at you and all of a sudden just go at it. It wasn't one attacking it. They would just go at each other to seemingly to kill it.
What an absolute horror for the mother and the grandmother to watch that.
Absolutely.
That's so scary. And maybe when it first started happening, they did write it off for that reason, because, kids just wrestle and, are little, chodes.
Right.
So at first they think it's fine. And then, like you said, then you see that they're actually trying to kill each other. That is eerie.
Exactly. Now, there began to be suspicion that perhaps the children weren't putting on a performance, well, not knowingly putting on a performance, but perhaps they were buying into it under the command and order of their mother, almost like a Munchausen by proxy in a way. They legitimately believe it and behave this way because they're believing what their mother is doing.
Right.
So, the caseworker had the children moved to an isolated exam room where they could continue the assessment. She was only accompanied by a nurse, the children, and the grandmother, Rosa. Because this whole time, Rosa's, even though she's saying yes, Rosa's kind of been like, I just want my grandkids to be okay. LaToya's kind of been the point of interest.
Yeah. That was a good was a good grandma.
Rosa's just like, I just want my grandkids to be okay, So this is what happened next, according to the caseworker's report, which was also backed up by the nurse. This was in the official report.
Okay, so now we have some proof. This is evidence. Yes. This is documented.
This was in the legitimate Child Services report that the caseworker brought up and was backed up by the nurse.
And these people would not lie, okay? These social workers, it's so much work for them to when something happens. They would not just make this up.
Right. They don't enjoy doing paperwork.
Yeah, this is not like the fun part.
Exactly.
They would not make this up.
Especially something that sounds so, you're right.
Yeah, they're like, we're fucking busy.
Apparently, the 7-year-old boy immediately began to growl again. And turning to his brother, said in a scary voice,
"It's time to die."
At that moment, the older brother turned to his grandma and attacked her, headbutting her in the stomach. Well, Rosa did the only thing she felt that could help. She grabbed her grandchild's hand and began to pray.
Oh,
like a good grandma. Isn't that sweet?
That's something your grandma would do.
That's something my grandma would do. That's the sweet. That's the best. That's the best grandma you could have. Mm-hmm. Well, even if your grandma's not, just someone who will hold your hand and just cross her fingers for you. You know what I mean? That's a good grandma.
I think my grandma would do that, but with a cocktail.
Yes, of course. When she did this, apparently the boy stopped immediately, standing up straight, on his face was that sinister grin.
Oh, dude, I can't.
Holding on to his grandma's hand, he began to walk backwards towards the wall. And it's said that as he connected with the wall, the boy continued walking backwards up the wall of the examination room and across the ceiling, all while holding on to his grandma. She's just standing in the center, and she's just like in awe as he's holding her hand as he's walking up the wall and onto the ceiling.
He is Fred Astaireing it, or
Right.
Jace, or Justin Timberlaking it,
Yeah.
if you will. And he is going up the wall, and so he's standing upside down. That's insane.
Just
and
holding
this is
on to his grandma's
documented.
hand. Yeah, and it's the right. The boy, it says, then fell, landing perfectly on his feet, never letting go once of his grandmother's hand.
That the fact that he fell on his feet is so freaky.
The caseworker and the nurse ran the fuck out of the room.
Oh,
Terrified, of course,
Oh,
ran out of
yes.
that damn room, ran out of the room.
They're like, this is not what I signed up for. I signed up for a lot.
That's right.
A lot. I was prepared mentally to walk into a lot of situations, but this was not one of them. And you know what? You've got to respect that.
Amen.
That's a lot.
The youngest son, the one who walked up the wall, he would stay that night at the hospital with his mother, LaToya, for more observation. The next day happened to be his birthday, so he was now 8 years old.
Oh, yay.
I know, it just happened to be 8
Okay.
years old, so he and his mother were released, and they returned home with gifts and cake.
Oh, and everything just worked out and it just stopped.
Wrong.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
Later that night, on her child's birthday,
Oh, no.
LaToya was informed that the Department of Child Services would be taking her children.
Oh, my God. Fuck. That was so much worse than anything I thought you were going to say.
Now, obviously, the caseworker saw what she saw
Right.
and believed the Ammons family. But in her report, she had written that she believed LaToya and the children were under spiritual and emotional distress. I don't know the full story. I'm guessing maybe when she wrote, she wasn't saying they're under spirit because of the mother or
Right,
because
right.
of...
But that,
I think
but
she
they
was,
are.
that the whole family, not just that the whole family
Right.
is under stress. And the government, I guess, took that as be like, well, even if it's not directly coming, we just need to get the children out.
They're just in an unsafe environment,
Exactly.
regardless of whose fault it is. Which,
Exactly.
oh my God,
I know,
LaToya,
heartbreaking.
Jesus Christ.
Now,
Ugh.
as you can imagine, LaToya and the family are devastated by this news. And the children are also they are.
Can you? I can't. I literally can't.
They're being taken during all. Then they're getting taken away from their
I feel
mother and grandmother. Horrible.
That's the real horror story.
This was the most horrific. If you think about it, if this is true, if they are telling the truth, this is really the most horrific aspect of all of this.
Yes.
After all that the family had experienced after being denied help from so many, now they're being blamed for abuse and neglect.
And not even just being blamed, they're being punished.
Punished for it.
Yeah.
Well, the Ammons family did have one ally. You see, during all the commotion at the hospital, the family happened to grab the attention of the hospital chaplain, Father Michael Maginot.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Insert.
That's right.
Right to the bone.
Father Michael Maginot of the St. Stephen Martyr Parish in nearby Merrillville on the morning of April 20th, 2012. Father Maginot received an urgent call about a young boy in Gary who was showing signs of demonic possession. Now, while Maginot was at first skeptical, he certainly believed in demons.
Okay.
A couple days later, April 22nd, 2012, Father Maginot meets with the Ammon family at their house in Gary. Now, as we said, Maginot is a believer, but he was going to make darn sure that there wasn't going to be any other explanations before he, slapped the
Exactly.
label of possession on this
He's
thing.
exactly. He believes, he's open to it, but you got to be extra thorough.
The Catholic Church, from what I understand, your head's basically got to be spinning the fuck around for you to get an exorcism.
Yeah.
You pretty much got to be fucking levitating for anyone to even think. And rightfully so. One, people get hurt, but two, you don't want to look, in the modern age, you don't want to look...
you don't want to accidentally say it's a possession and then it not be a possession and then you...
Right.
Someone gets hurt.
First things first, Maginot needed to rule out any possible natural causes. So for the first 2 hours, he listened as LaToya and Rosa told them the story from the beginning. During the interview, the light in the nearby bathroom would occasionally begin to flicker only to go back to normal when Maggio would get up to go have a look.
Okay, weird.
Likewise, during the interview, the kitchen blinds would swing back and forth. A draft, who knows?
But still,
But still freaky.
something to mention.
You're right. At one point, they all watched as wet footprints appeared in the living room as if someone had just walked through the house after coming in from the rain.
No, fuck.
At one point, LaToya began to complain of having a bad headache, which prompted Father Maginot, to place the crucifix upon her forehead. And when he did this, LaToya began to convulse uncontrollably.
Another sign of demonic possession,
That's right.
according to the Catholic Church.
The interview that night was about 4 hours long in total, but when it was over, Father Maginot was certain he had a genuine case of demonic possession on his hands.
Okay.
Not only did he feel there were demons present, but he said he also felt that there were spirits of former deceased people as well, which is interesting. He went through the whole house, blessing every room with holy water and reading scripture as he went. As he went to leave, he strongly suggested to LaToya and Rosa that they and the kids do the same and get out.
Yes, okay.
This time they did follow his advice.
Okay.
Less than a week later, LaToya and Rosa returned to the house for a meeting with the caseworker. Accompanying the caseworker were 2 police officers. Now, this was not normal procedure, but these 2 officers were curious about the rumors they had heard, and likewise, I'm sure the caseworker didn't mind having a little backup going to this freaky house. The group then proceeded room to room through the house, inspecting as they went. And lastly, they came to the door in the kitchen that led down into the unfinished basement. Underneath the stairs was a dirt floor. The concrete around it was jagged as if it had been broken. LaToya told police that whatever was affecting the house seemed to be emanating from that patch of dirt.
Yeah, so that's very odd. There's no real, reason for under the stairs to be dirt.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
yes.
Now, one of these officers was also a police captain, and he went on record saying he believes that the Ammons house was in fact infested with demons. During the visit, one of the audio recorders of the policeman malfunctioned, and the power light on it began to flash, indicating that the batteries were low on energy. The funny thing was, the captain had replaced those batteries with fresh ones earlier that day.
So he's like, there's no way.
Right. The other radio didn't malfunction. Rather, it recorded a mysterious voice that, when played back, seemed to be saying, "Hey." The officer also took numerous photos of and inside the house. One of the photos of the basement stairs, there can be seen a cloud of like a white fog image in the upper right-hand corner.
Oh.
When enlarged, they were able to see in the fog what appeared to be a face. And when they enlarged it, they also saw a second image in green that appeared to be the outline of a woman. Photos were also taken on their own private cell phones as well, and they also had strange images on them. Now, when driving away in their police cars, their police-issued radio began to malfunction. Later that night, the captain would report that his seat, the driver's seat in his squad car, began to freak out. It would move back and forth. It was like the adjuster, like the motor thing was flipping, back and forth.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
He took it to a mechanic, and the mechanic said, the motor that makes the chair move is on the fritz, and it's a good thing you came in because that can easily lead to a crash.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Well, in April of 2012, at the request of the Department of Child Services, Lake Juvenile Court gave the Department of Child Services temporary custody of the 3 children after an investigation had revealed that the kids had not been attending school regularly.
Yeah, that sucks because they were so tired they couldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, while the state deemed this to mean that the children's education was being neglected, LaToya argued that it was because of the demonic crap going on at the house that was the reason why the kids had been missing school.
Yeah.
So the 2 oldest kids, the 12-year-old daughter, the 9-year-old son, they were taken to St. Joseph's Carmelite House in nearby East Chicago, while the youngest one was sent to another institution for further psych evaluation.
Oh, God, fuck, that sucks.
It was there that a clinical psychologist deemed that the boy was stable and coherent. He only acted bizarre when the subject of demons came up.
Wow.
In which the boy would immediately try to change the subject to anything else. And when that would
makes
happen,
sense.
he would kick into that thing. The psychologist concluded that the boy did not have a disorder, but that the whole demons thing was probably an idea instilled by his mother. And so the Department of Child Services decided to give LaToya her children back, but with the stipulation that they were no longer to talk about demons or anything of the like.
Okay.
Likewise, LaToya was instructed to find new employment and new housing. In addition to this, the child services and police would occasionally also stop by just for further check-ins to make sure everything's going okay.
Okay.
So the next month, May 10th of 2012, LaToya, Rosa, and the 3 officers from the original visit, a caseworker, came back to the Ammons house along with Father Maginot. Likewise, they brought with them a police dog. But this was a new rep from Child Services who came with them, as the original caseworker said under no circumstances would she ever step foot in that house again.
Wow.
Together, they all headed down. Like I said, and now they have a police dog even with them.
Jeez.
Together, they all headed down to the basement. The first sign that something was off was when one of the officers noted a strange viscous substance dripping from the wall. They described it as being both slippery and tacky to the touch.
Oh, yeesh.
Maginot was eager to investigate the patch of dirt underneath the stairs.
Oh, he was eager.
Right. Oh, he was thinking maybe there's a pentagram or some sign of demonic, of ritual maybe that might be purpose for this, something that would note potential satanic shenanigans. You know what I mean? Well, the dog was also there to sniff around for any, possibly even potential body parts. Who knows?
Or treats.
Part of what prompted this investigation was after a series of weird visits by LaToya's boyfriend to the home. Maginot, apparently very contentious. Apparently, she found out that she got a call one day, LaToya, that he was apparently already married.
What?
So he was apparently a bit of a scumbag.
Oh,
so once she found out, she was like, no, even though he tried to so they thought maybe he did something. Maybe he put a curse on the family or something.
Okay.
Right. Well, later, Father Maginot would be quoted in an interview with the National Catholic Register. When he asked if he felt LaToya's boyfriend had anything to do with what was going on, he had this to say. Maybe he put a curse on the mother. He had once asked her for an article of underwear as a souvenir. Around that time, LaToya also had a family picture disappear from her album, and a pair of her shoes disappeared. Personal items are often used in curses against a person. LaToya received an angry phone call from a woman who said she was the boyfriend's wife. LaToya said she never knew he was married and was going to break up with him anyway. The lady warned that she was going to be very sorry that she had ever had anything to do with him.
Well, gosh, darn it.
A little bit of drama there.
Wow, drama llama.
The police found this patch of earth suspicious, and they dug it up for about 4 feet to see what they might find. And find something they did. Buried under the staircase, they found a press-on fingernail, a sock, a political button, and a pair of boys' socks with the feet cut off. Also, they found a lid for a pan of some kind, as well as a pair of underpants.
What?
But the strangest of all the items was a heavy weight of unknown origin or use. Now, with the youngest boy talking about an imaginary friend who had claimed to have been killed, the group began to wonder what if this weight was an indication of foul play, or maybe some kind of an accident in which someone died and then had to cover up.
Okay.
The police shoveled the dirt back in, and the Father Maginot sprinkled the area with blessed salt. When the group had all gone back upstairs, LaToya and the caseworker were suddenly bombarded with strange sensations. LaToya claimed to be having an intense headache, while the caseworker said she was having a pain in her finger. And indeed she was. The group watched as the caseworker's pinky turned white, almost as if the blood was being pinched off.
Oh, weird.
She then started to have a panic attack and excused herself to go outside for some air. Now, not long after, the police captain left while the other 2 officers remained to continue investigating. It was then that they noticed more of this strange substance. But this time, it was dripping from the blinds in the bedroom. Secretly, they wondered if LaToya or Rosa were doing this when they weren't looking. So they wiped away the substance and closed the door to the room and stayed out of there for about 30 minutes. When they went back in, they were shocked to see that the substance was still dripping from an unknown origin.
And didn't they like put a Q-tip on the door or something so that they knew that LaToya or Rosa couldn't have come in?
Exactly.
Yeah, so like the Q-tip would have been broken.
Exactly.
If someone had entered the room when they weren't around or something.
Exactly. Well, for Father Maginot, that settled it. He was convinced he was dealing with demonic forces here at this house. So Father Maginot wrote a letter to Bishop Dale Meltzer requesting permission to perform an exorcism, but the request was declined, with the bishop instructing Maginot to perhaps consult other priests with experience in exorcism. He did this, and Maginot claims that these advisors of sorts told him to conduct a sort of minor exorcism on LaToya. First, he performed a series of powerful blessings on the house. And then he began the exorcism. You see, in attendance were also the case manager and the 2 officers. The caseworker would later say she definitely felt something evil in that room. And on top of that, in the few weeks that followed that exorcism, the caseworker claimed to have come up against numerous problems. First, she got burned in a motorcycle accident. Then...
Wait, she got burned in a motorcycle
I'm guessing
accident?
it wasn't a serious accident, but
No,
not
still,
that she got burned.
Oh my God.
Then she broke her ribs while jet skiing. And then she broke her hand and ankle. All of this within a few weeks of the exorcism, all of them completely unrelated.
That is insane. I mean, that does not happen.
Yeah. Before the exorcism began, you see, Father Maginot explained to LaToya that it was imperative they must identify the names of the demons that were attacking the family. One way of figuring that out, Maginot explained to her, was to focus on the things the demons had done. Apparently, one can often find clues to their identity within the mischief they cause.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Well, whenever LaToya would use a computer to search for names, the computer would freeze and shut off. Likewise, she'd be hit with waves of nausea and dizziness. But she was eventually able to find specific names that seemed to feel right to LaToya. And having those names, Father Maginot was ready to begin. And it was also then that Maginot revealed that the bishop had in fact given him permission for an exorcism.
What?
I guess that was to see if she was real. I don't know if she was really wanting. I don't know.
Okay.
In all, there were 3 exorcisms that Father Maginot would perform. The first 2 in English, the last in Latin.
Damn, okay.
On their own free will, the 2 police officers returned to assist with the exorcism in any way they could, primarily for emotional and physical support.
Oh, wow. The 2 police officers did?
Yes.
That's a big deal.
It does. And while they weren't there for the 3rd one, it does say a lot. These 2 completely on their own volition came to support, During these first 2 exorcisms, LaToya would converse and thrash about before suddenly falling asleep. According to Father Maginot, falling asleep is often a tactic used by the demons to lessen the effectiveness of the ritual. Like if the person is asleep, maybe it doesn't take in as much. I guess.
Yeah, like something is closed off to this realm or something.
Right. But it was apparent by the end of the 2nd exorcism that their grip was weakening. Father Maginot would need to rest before the final exorcism.
Yes, of course.
The 3rd and final exorcism.
Okay, here we go.
Happened in June of 2012. By then, the police officers and the caseworker, weren't there. It was just Father Maginot and his brother, who he'd asked to come and help. And of course, the Ammons family. During the exorcism, LaToya would convulse some before falling asleep, and it is believed that this was the end of her possession. In the fall of 2012, LaToya would regain custody of her children.
Good.
And with them, moved with her children and the grandma, Rosa, to a new house in Indianapolis.
Oh, good.
So that's wrapping up the bulk of this story.
Oh my God. What an absolute emotional roller coaster.
Yeah.
The intensity of this too, I mean, it really ran the whole gamut of just things being a little bit spooky to being truly a terrifying.
Yeah.
And then also in supernatural ways and in non-supernatural ways.
Exactly.
I mean, in natural ways.
Exactly.
It's... Damn.
Absolutely. And as we said, a good bookend for this is the documentary Demon House.
Yeah.
Created by Zach Bagans.
Definitely worth a watch, I would say.
Very fun. Very fun. It's like we said, they touch on all this. It's mostly about his experience.
Yeah, because basically what happens is he buys the house to do an investigation. So it's kind of his investigation post all of this.
Yes. He bought this house with an intent to make a documentary and everything, which he did. But apparently members of the team were affected along the way.
Oh my God.
What happened to Zach Baggins?
I mean, I don't want to give it away, do we?
Zach Baggins ends up getting
a permanent injury.
A permanent injury. You're right. Let's not spoil. But
it scared me.
It should be stated that the house no longer stands. Mm-hmm. Zach Baggins, once he wrapped, had that fucker demolished.
That's right.
So it was bad enough that Zach Baggins was like, I'm going to burn this. I'm going to tear this fucker down.
Yeah.
But apparently, it's not uncommon to see groups of people gathered there on random nights where the house once stood conducting satanic ritual.
I know a lot of the neighbors, too, were concerned when Zach Baggins said he was going to knock down the house because they thought, where are these spirits going to go?
That's true, yeah.
They, or demons or whatever, were they contained to the house and now they're free to roam? I mean, I don't know. Or do they just go back to their own home? I don't know.
Who
I
knows?
think that's what's the scary thing is that we just don't know.
We just don't know, right? Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap us up for the House of 200 Demons.
What a classic haunted house, spooky, scary modern story.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Some good for Friday the 13th.
Very appropriate, very apropos.
Once again, if you would like to support this show, go to patreon.com/Creep Street Podcast. My name is Dylan Hackworth.
I am Maureen Bogey.
Citizens of the Milky Way, good night and goodbye.